we are going to talk about, well, first of all, have any of you heard on TV, online, anything about AI? Raise your hand. Okay. So, we've all heard about it. Who wants to define it for me? Anyone? Okay. Yeah. So, AI is this thing right now that is, you're hearing it all over the place right now. And we're going to talk some about what that is, what it isn't, as we go forward in this. But I first wanted to start off by just kind of giving you, especially for those who don't know me, a little bit of my chops of why I can talk about this. So just first of all, I am a Gen Xer. So if you kind of know your generations, you know, we got like the silent generation, got boomers, which I think most of you are probably in that boomer generation here. And then after the boomers came Gen X, me, and those kind of born from about 1965 to early 80s, mid to late 80s, something like that. And then came the millennials, and then Gen Z, and then there's some other, you know, starting to get what's going to be the generations after that. I will say Gen X has this, we have this kind of monkey on our back that we feel like we always get forgotten. People talk about the boomers a lot, and they talk about millennials, and like all us Gen Xers in the middle like, hey, what about us? So Gen X is very much this in-between generation. And me born in 1973, I am like smack dab in the middle of Gen X. So we grew up where technology, especially like communications technology and so forth, I grew up learning to type on an IBM typewriter. Okay, so you know, yeah, you know, white out on the pages, stuff like that. So I learned to type on that. However, by the time I got to junior high, we had computer labs in our schools. And so just in that time from when I was learning to type when I was in elementary school on a typewriter, a few years later we have computer labs at Platt Junior High. Same thing when I got into high school and so forth. Also happened that both of my parents worked for IBM. And so I remember I can kind of go back and look at the stages in my life of the different computers that came into my house. So starting with this big ol' IBM PC XT where the hard drive, the storage unit was like this box. It was like this by this by this and weighed some ridiculous amount. Had a monitor about that big. It was black screen with green text. So I remember that computer. I remember the Commodore VIC-20 that my dad bought for my sister and me to use. And then moving up to an IBM PC Junior, I think is what it was, and then some others along the way until I remember the Gateway 2000 desktop computer that I got when I went to college. Then if any of you bought a Gateway 2000 computer that came in the cow boxes, if anyone remember those ones. Okay, so I'm in that middle place where I had a rotary phone in our house growing up, and now, of course, using cell phone. Okay, so that whole thing. So that's one of the things about Gen X is that we straddle those things, especially in that those formative years. On the education side of things, yeah, I had all that kind of growing up, but I do not have a computer science degree. I don't have a programming degree. I don't have a computer engineering degree or anything like that. What I do have is a bachelor's in psychology, which is great for learning about technology, a master's of divinity, and a doctorate of ministry. Okay? So, yeah. So that is not necessarily, so we're not going to be getting into a lot of the technical details of things today, but technology has always been this thing that I have absolutely adored. And I can look out and see some of the folks who have done tech support here at the church, you all kind of know, I just kind of get it. It's just one of those things like you can give me a piece of technology and I will fiddle around with it for about 15 minutes and probably have a pretty good idea how to use it. And so those are kind of my chops for this, as well as just a general interest in all of this. So, okay, why do we need to talk about AI? I was talking with Nancy beforehand, and she said there's a couple people who shared with her that they weren't going to come because, well, they don't have a computer, they don't use technology. AI is already very much a part of many of the technologies that you use that you might not even think about, and it's going to get even more so. So if anyone says this doesn't impact you, no, it absolutely does. And it impacts you in a lot of different ways. So if you've ever gone to the doctor, AI is going to be, has been, and will be a part of that. Do you have grandchildren or children or other kids that you care about? AI is something that is very much a part of their lives right now. And simply, do you care about the world that we live in? If you care about the world we live in, this is something we need to at least have some knowledge about and what to do about it. So what today is and what it isn't. So what today is not is a technical discussion of AI. We're not going to get into the nuts and bolts of how ChatGPT works and how Google Gemini works and all this kind of stuff and how they program these things and all the stuff that's the technical stuff that as soon as we start getting into some of those conversations, you might be like, wah, 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 like Charlie Brown's teachers and, the adults, wah, yeah. We're not going to get too much into any of that. We're going to get a little bit, but not a whole lot. This is also not a shrill against AI. So there are some out there who are basically like waving the flag of like, don't do anything with this, run away. No. There's things that AI has been doing for decades for us that has transformed a lot of the ways that we live already. And in many ways is vital to the functioning of our global life together. And so this isn't a shrill against AI, but it's also not an endorsement. It's also not just a, hey, whatever is great, just jump into that. Okay, so it's not those things. So what it is some basics of what we're talking about. So when you hear about it, talked about in an advertisement or on the news, or if you use an Apple iPhone, you're going to download potentially something in a couple months from now that Apple's going to talk about saying that they now have onboard AI on your phone. What is that? And so some ideas of what those things are. Google already has Gemini starting to be built into their Android phones. Microsoft computers, if you go to Best Buy right now, there's all kinds of signs saying Microsoft Copilot built into Windows, right? These are all their AI things that are in there. We're going to give some examples of it, different ways that AI is being used. So we're going to kind of play around with a few things, and then, of course, trying to respond to questions. I don't like saying questions and answers because sometimes I might have an answer. Some of them I might just have a response. Okay, that's a great question. Here's my thought on it. It might not be an answer, but it may be just sort of this is how I think about it. So that's what we're doing. All right, so what is AI? AI, short for artificial intelligence. Now, AI is in danger right now of becoming like Xerox, Kleenex, or Coke. Okay? So you're making a copy on a copy machine. Let's say it's what is ours upstairs, Michelle? Is it a Toshiba? It's a Sharp. Okay. Sometimes when you're running copies on a Sharp, people are like, oh, I need to get some Xerox. You need to Xerox some things, right? Xerox has become so synonymous with making copies that making copies is also called Xeroxing, okay? Kleenex is the name of a brand of tissue, but how often, hey, can I have a Kleenex even if it's a box of Puffs? Or Kirkland Costco brand, or Coke. I learned when I married into my wife's Southern family that in some places in the South, you go into a store or restaurant and you say, about getting something to drink, and you say, I'd like a Coke. And that can mean a Sprite, that could mean a Coke, that could mean a Dr. Pepper, that could mean all kinds of things. So I remember going in and saying, I'll have a Coke, and she said, well, what kind? And I'm like, well, Coke. Well, So anyway, AI is in danger of becoming that because it's kind of the hip word to kind of throw into all kinds of stuff right now. And so want to kind of break that down a little bit. So here's kind of a first definition, maybe. There we go, okay. So this is the best definition that I found of it. Okay, so AI is software that attempts to mimic the ways that humans think in order to perform complex tasks such as analyzing, reasoning, and learning. Okay, so that is a really good umbrella definition. So let's break that down a little bit. It's software, right? It has been programmed. It's not some kind of living being that's sitting in a Google headquarters somewhere, right? So it is software. It has been programmed and continues to be programmed. It is not a done, fixed, finished product by any means right now that attempts to mimic the ways that humans think, right? So it is not yet to a place where it is mimicking how humans think. And it is only the best approximation of how people can figure out how humans think, because in some ways we still don't know how humans think, okay? But it's trying to mimic how humans think in order to perform complex tasks, to analyze, to reason, and to learn. So that's a good umbrella definition I found of what we're talking about when we're talking about AI. So before we go any further, does anyone have any questions or thoughts about that? Yeah.
Do you like Alexa?
Okay, that's a great question. So Alexa, Siri, Hey Google, all of these things, these automated assistants that you can have, they use forms of AI. They're very basic forms of some of what we're talking about. And we'll get into those in just a moment, okay? But that's a great connection. That's a great connection. Okay, so within AI, so think of AI, that is kind of like the umbrella, okay, over all of this. One branch of AI is called machine learning. This is the place, next about 5 minutes is going to kind of be the technical stuff we're going to do today. When I was in seminary and I had my Hebrew class, our professor would do this thing of saying, okay, we're going to have a gunner moment in class right now. So we're going to talk about this word, and we're going to talk about how it gets translated or parsed in this way. And for the gunners in the class, I'm going to explain why it does that. For the survivors, turn your brains off for the next 5 minutes. You just need to know this is what it does. You don't care about why, okay? So this is going to be the gunner moment right here. So we're going to get into some technicals. So machine learning is where machines are trained to do specific tasks and function somewhat autonomously, okay? So a couple weeks ago, one of our church members, Steve McAllister, shared with me that when he was working for Cincinnati Bell, that they started using a form of AI called machine learning to start processing some aspects of bills and records for their customers. And so this was something that was kind of behind the scenes, run by the computer, programmed to do these things and do them automatically, okay? And the computer kind of functions on its own. And Siri's jumping in, see? Siri's still listening. Functioning on its own and kind of doing some of its own processing and learning. So if you remember, does anyone remember, it's probably 10 years ago now, when a computer called Deep Blue beat Garry Kasparov in chess? Yeah. Okay. That was using machine learning. That was taking in millions of chess permutations, and as it played and it saw where Garry Kasparov moved, it would analyze these millions and millions and millions of processes to select what it thought would be the next best move. So that's machine learning. Okay? Next. You are being touchy on me. Okay. Come on. Apparently the world is not The AI overlords are not happy with me here. So, okay. Second, deep learning. This is taking machine learning to another step. This is where artificial networks are created to try to mimic the brain to perform complex tasks without human intervention. So, in this case, this is where things like Siri and Alexa are starting to come in, because what they are doing is automatically taking what you say or what is asked and parsing it through and coming up with its response. Okay? So it is continually learning. So when you say something on your phone to Siri, that's being sent to Apple, and Apple is holding on to that until you tell them to erase it, and it's using that to help further shape how Siri works. Okay? So that's deep learning. Natural language processing. Again, this is another branch. We're still in that gunner part for just a few moments here. This is where an AI type of thing is using natural language to hear things in natural language and to respond in natural language. Okay? So this is not just typing into the search bar Cincinnati Reds score. Okay? In a regular search engine, that's going to look for, okay, Cincinnati Reds score, and then it's going to come up with its search result. If you ask this natural language thing, that would be simply saying, I'm curious, what was the score of last night's game for the Cincinnati Reds? So there's a lot of data that's being thrown at it, and in these systems, they're parsing that down to understand, oh, you're just curious what the score of the Reds game was last night. And also, it is then responding in natural language sorts of ways. And I'm going to show you an example of that with what's called ChatGPT in just a few minutes. So it's not just putting out a list of results like what Google does when you do a search, but it's giving you a lengthy response that sounds like it was written by a human being. Okay, so that's natural language processing. My goodness, okay. Last two I want to put in here. One is robotics. This is where AI is being taken and put into tangible things in the real world. Okay? So if anybody have seen the videos of the robots being made by Boston Dynamics, these robots that look like these incredibly articulate moving dogs and animals and things like that, using robotics and using AI, they're making these things to be able to potentially function autonomously. There are police departments in the United States that have already purchased these dogs to do patrols and surveillance around neighborhoods, totally autonomously. Yeah, so these are some of the things, yeah, so you can go, oh, wow, that's scary, or you can also say that's keeping cops safe. You can look at it both ways, and that's what we'll get into somewhat here too. Last one I want to do is what's called generative, which is not being generative here. Goodness, okay. Is it showing up on the screen? Yeah. That's weird, it's not showing up on mine. That's why, okay. All right, I'm going to trust that it is working. Okay. There it is. See, technology, okay. Generative AI is where it's taking things like creating audio, visual, and images from prompts and creating, quote, new things from those prompts. So it's creating an image, some of which are almost completely photorealistic, from just typing in and saying, I want a picture of a dog riding a buffalo in the middle of traffic. And there are some of these AIs that will create an image of a dog riding a buffalo in the middle of traffic. It's pretty incredible and also pretty scary. So those are some of the branches of AI. And that's, we're going to stop at this point on the technical sides of things and start talking a little bit more of, okay, how is this lived out and how is this actually being done in the world around us? Any questions at this point? Are you completely lost? Okay, all right, yay, okay. All right, so some examples. How many of you have heard of ChatGPT? Okay, so about half of you. All right, ChatGPT is the AI chatbot, as it's called, is one basic part of it, that is really the thing that kind of came on the scene about 2 years ago. That was like, oh my gosh, this is something really different. And it was created by a company called OpenAI, and their founder is a guy named Sam Altman. And ChatGPT came out of nowhere and surprised the likes of Google and Microsoft and Apple and others about how far along ChatGPT was compared to what these other companies had done. Okay, so I'm going to get out of here and I am going to pull up ChatGPT for you. All right. So you can download it as an app to your phone. They do have iOS and Google apps of it, or you can just go to chatgpt.com as we have it up here on the screen. I know you can't read all this, it's a little small. But what ChatGPT is it's called a chatbot. So let's just start out with, hi, how are you today? Hi, I'm doing well, thank you, how about you? All right, that works. Does anyone have a question you would like to ask ChatGPT? Okay, what is the weather in Cincinnati right now? Currently, the weather in Cincinnati is partly cloudy with a temperature of around 82 degrees. There's a slight chance of showers and thunderstorms this afternoon with a 30% chance of precipitation and light variable winds. Today it will be mostly cloudy with a low around 68 degrees and a slight chance of showers and thunderstorms before 9 p.m. They pulled this from the National Weather Service and from a website called Weather Underground. So what they did is they took the data from these other ones and coalesced it into this nice paragraph. Okay? So let's ask it something about the Reds. We'll go back to the Reds. Tell us about the history of the Big Red Machine. Okay? Let's see if it actually figures out. Okay. The Big Red Machine refers to the Cincinnati Reds baseball team during the 1970s, particularly known for their dominance in Major League Baseball from 1970 to 1976. This period is marked by exceptional team performance, resulting in 4 National League pennants and 2 World Series championships in 1975 and 1976. And you see all this stuff that it's continuing to put in there about key players and management and key achievements that have come up. Okay? So style of play, legacy, yeah. So what ChatGPT has done here is it's pulled this data from all kinds of sources and it coalesced it into this summary. So the processing power that is being used for AI systems is crazy. There's an article that is on an outline I'll give you at the end. The energy cost of what these AI resources are pulling from is crazy. Google's energy use went up 40% last year, and it's almost entirely because of Gemini. And that's also part of why these companies are so investing in renewable technology, so they can kind of just keep renewing this on their own. But it takes huge processing power to do this. We do. And so the other thing about ChatGPT is, and you may have heard about this with children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, is in school. So little Bobby gets an assignment, says, write a 500-word essay about the signing of the Declaration of Independence. So independence. Oops, misspelled independence. Okay. So I'm not going to read this, but it's just going to keep going on through all of this. It's going to have 500 words. I did write a 500-word essay about the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Yeah. Yeah. You have a question? Yeah.
No, I do. I think what occurs to me with this availability and how much learning is ever going to take place.
So that's so that's some of the challenges. So I have 2 of my 3 kids are in college right now. Third will be starting in the fall. And every professor has a conversation at the beginning of their classes with their students about use of AI. Some of them are being creative about how to bring it in, knowing that some of the students are going to use it. There are also some tools on there for professors to be able to take an essay that a student writes, copy it into a check system to see whether or not it came through that. So yay, so they got that one going there too. So this is an example. So this is different than a search engine. Like you could do a search on, give me information about the Declaration of Independence, and you're going to get a list of all kinds of things on Wikipedia and government websites and all kinds of things that you can take information and synthesize it. But what ChatGPT and these other chatbots can do is they can take all of this and synthesize it into something like this. So it's really, and this is literally just scratching the surface of some of what this can do. Nancy. We're going to get to that. We're going to get to that. So hold that thought, because that is hugely important. Okay? Jim had a question, then we'll go over to Jana. Yeah, Jim.
Whatever his name was, for a 500-word essay.
Mm-hmm.
If I did the same thing, wouldn't I get the same thing?
You might. You might. It may. Some of what ChatGPT does is kind of pull some things that are similar to what you have searched. And so it does do some learning about you when you're putting the information in, the ways that you write and the ways that you type. A lot of students who are using ChatGPT, they'll use this and take it and modify it. Kind of like if you had your buddy in class who gave you their paper to write, you took it and you kind of shifted it around so it sounded more like you rather than your buddy Jim, something like that. So Jana and then Barb.
So this is still research, right? I mean, it's doing research for you, but it's put in a cattier version. I mean, it's not like you're chatting with it, and you can't say like, what's your favorite color, or have a conversation.
I don't have personal preferences or favorite colors, but I can help you learn more about colors or anything else you're interested in. What is your favorite color? So, yeah, there we go. Barb, do you have a question?
Talking about how easy it is to cheat. Yeah. Our son is at the college level, and he said for several years there have been ways to go in and find things that sound the same, and he said it's pretty easy sometimes that people have been using the same phrases in different papers, and he said immediately that it was.
Yep. Yeah. So now I want to give you some examples of the generative. What's I mentioned that umbrella thing, those little sub pieces, generative AI, where it's creating something kind of out of nothing. Okay. So many of you know I'm a photographer, and this is a photograph of a heron that I took 2 weeks ago, something like that, at Winton Woods in Cincinnati. In some ways, it's a really great photo. I was really close to the heron. It's really great. However, it's not a great photo because it's really compressed. Like the bird's kind of the whole photo. There's no room around the bird to breathe, so to speak, right? So I'm going to show you something you can do with this. And this is with Adobe's Photoshop version of AI. Okay, and this is what's called generative AI. Expand that out. Expand this out. Oops. And this out down here. Okay, so you see here how I've kind of drawn this box around it. And now here in this little text box at the bottom, I just typed in expand this photo. So what it's doing is it's not doing this on my computer. It's doing this, sending this to their servers and processing this on their AI servers, this photo. And so that is one image that it came up with. And it gives some other examples. So like that. Like maybe it was on a dock, or just simply like that. So that's just what's called the generative expansion is what Adobe calls it. The other thing you can now do in here, let's go up here. We're going to just make this little circle here in this spot. And I'm going to say, add a few small ducks. Okay, so again, it's sending this to its servers. There they are. Now, they give you a couple of options. So you got these two ducks, or you got those two little ducks. Now, also notice, you may not be able to see it as clear there, it even inserted the ripples around the ducks into the water. Okay, so if you look close, you'll see they're kind of a little cartoony, but these are the things that you can do, and these are things that this is just with Adobe Photoshop on my computer. Okay, they also in the Adobe Photoshop app on my phone, you can do the same thing. Okay, that's some of what can be done here. So there's some great things about that. You know, you can edit things out of photos that you don't want in there. You can expand a photo that you wanted to have expanded. You can play around with some things in ways you couldn't do before. Okay, but that gets into the very thing that Nancy brought up a minute ago, is what is real? What is real? So if I took a photo of this white tablecloth table right here, but I don't want that tray and those plates on it, in this I can just literally highlight that and their AI thing will erase it and you wouldn't even know the difference. It's not real. That is real right there, okay? So, Nancy.
The water is like the most gorgeous color.
Mm-hmm.
Does this person use like a filter on their camera or what? Because I think they play it on, I never get this.
Yeah.
So is that part of it?
Some of that can just simply be some of the color editing tools you have in some of those programs. You can bump up colors and all that stuff. I will tell you in my own photography, I do as little as possible of what's called post-processing. But there's some things that a camera can't get right because its own AI is trying to figure out and might not get it right. And I remember as I looked at that sunrise, you know, it was a little more pink than what's showing up there. And so I can just take a little slider and do that. So that's not as much AI. I want to kind of get through a couple more things here and then we'll have some time for questions. Some more, okay? All right. Okay, so we did Lightroom and Photoshop. Audio and video, I'm going to do this one real quick. So this is an AI video generator, okay? So we are going to try that dog riding a buffalo in traffic, okay? Okay, so this is a site that will create a short video. It will look cartoony based on what you suggest. So it's doing its processing there. It'll take just a minute. Now these are very rudimentary. There are tools that professionals are using that are infinitely better than this. And that's where we'll get into some of the scaries here, okay? All right, so here Okay, so here's a sign of where AI is not getting it right. It made a dog combined with a buffalo, right? So yeah, so it is not perfect yet, but it did pick up on a lot of it. Dog, buffalo traffic. Okay, so yeah, so AI is far, far, far from perfect. All right, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to go through some things about basics of how AI is being used today. And I'm going to do it by the movies. So on your tables, you have those movie posters. Each one of those movies and TV shows are ones that from literally as far back as 1927, a film called Metropolis, like recent releases right now, are ones that have dealt with AI in different ways, even if they didn't use the language of it, okay? So first of all, AI is nothing new, right? I just mentioned one of those, Metropolis. 1927, a movie about this robot that arrives in New York City and is a robot, self-thinking, self-acting robot. It's an AI, even though they don't use the language. Movie 2001 came out in the late 60s. Do you remember what the name of that wonderful little colored dot was there? HAL. HAL, yes, the HAL 9000 was an AI on the ship that they were traveling on. Okay, and Hal is kind of the bad guy in the story, sort of, right? The movie Alien and its follow-ups, Aliens and so forth, all had these synthetic humans in the stories who were part of the science crews, okay? Star Trek: The Next Generation. Actually, the original Star Trek, the computer was its own kind of thinking, unit. I forget the name of the computer on the original Star Trek. Does anyone remember? Okay. But on Star Trek: The Next Generation, this fellow right in the bottom there next to the woman in purple, that's Commander Data. He is an artificial human and is as much a part of the crew as anybody else, but completely artificial. Movie War Games that came out in the 80s with Matthew Broderick is about an AI that the United States uses to control its nuclear attacks. And Matthew Broderick plays a hacker who gets into the system and types, has a computer saying, do you want to play a game? And Matthew Broderick says, sure. And says, how about global thermonuclear war? And the whole rest of the movie is them trying to stop this. Okay, but it's an AI that's going on in the background. So AI is nothing new. And in real life, AI has been used for decades. So astrophysicists have been using AI to comb through the vast amounts of data that they're pulling in from radio and visual and infrared telescopes and so forth around in orbit and on Earth. So for example, SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, has a network of radio telescopes all over the world that is pulling in these radio signals that are all around us out in space. There is so much data that it is physically impossible for human beings to go through it all. So for decades, astrophysicists have been using AI to sort through this to where certain things kind of stand out and go, that's interesting. And so the AI flags it, and then a researcher looks at it and goes, oh, no, that's just the pulsar 25 billion or 25 light years away, right? And so astrophysicists have been using this. Medical researchers are using this, have been using this. This was used in some of the decoding of the human genome, or DNA strands. It was used in sorting through research, in research methods, research projects, and so forth. Cancer studies and cancer research, they're using AI to try to filter through these vast amounts of data and try to sort through it all to understand it, because it's so much that we can't, as human beings, do it on our own, okay? If you remember when COVID hit and supply chains got thrown out of whack all over the world, many of the supply chains and supply logistics we have in the world are run by AIs because they are so complicated of where things need to get and when, that it is too much for human beings to sort through that on their own. And so when something gets thrown into the works, the whole thing falls apart. Kind of like the airlines a couple days ago, right? Same kind of deal that's going on there. If you've used GPS on your phone, AI is doing some of that work. When you type in, I want directions to Cleveland, Ohio, and it does all this stuff that somehow routes you around for the fastest route to get there, there's using forms of AI to do that. Siri, Alexa, Hey Google, these are all some of these rudimentary forms, okay? So AI is nothing new. So let's though talk about some of the benefits of AI, because there are some things that are scary. We're gonna get to the scary in a minute, but let's talk about the benefits, okay? Yeah, we do need to talk about the scary. We do need to talk about the scary. All right, so here are some films that have come out. These all in the last, well, Star Wars 1977, but all the rest of these since the 90s, that are ones that show the benefits of AI and what it can do. So with Star Wars, you have those two droids, R2-D2 and C-3PO. They're artificial intelligences. They are autonomous, self-thinking, self-acting, self-deciding robots. Okay? The movie Wall-E, beautiful, amazing Pixar film, right? It has these robots that are trying to clean up the earth that we've destroyed, and they're acting autonomously, completely autonomously to do this work to try to clean up the earth. And also some of the other things going on, and they get into some other stories with that as well, but AI is a part of that. A movie that came out just last year called The Creator shows how we have this mix, or this future mix of artificial humans and humans living together, and how the artificial humans are doing jobs that the humans either can't do or won't do. Okay? Movie Ex Machina is one that shows AI being a companion to somebody who is lonely. Somebody who doesn't have any kind of companionship in the world has this robot who is this very attractive looking woman, is the way it's set up, but is a companion for this person who had no one else in their life. Movie AI, that's a Steven Spielberg movie. There's a little boy who's at the heart of the story, who is a child given to parents who couldn't have a child on their own. But you don't, when you look, in the film, character that is this AI looks nothing different than a regular boy. Okay? So there are some things. In Japan right now, one of the things Japan is dealing with is a population that is aging faster than the rest of the society can keep up with. Okay? So you have people who are, say, in nursing homes or living alone, and they're starting to use some of these these robots, artificial humans. They don't look human yet, but they're there to have conversation, at least have some interaction for people. Because right now in Japan, you have people who either won't do that job or they just simply don't have enough people to do that job. Okay? So those are some of the things that AI can do. And also we talked about the things of science and research, that AI can comb through things and work through things that we just physically cannot do. So those are some of the benefits. All right, let's talk about the scary. All right, does the date August 29th, 1997 mean anything to anyone in this room? What's that? Well, you're kind of close. This is a fictional date. Who at the table has the movie poster for Terminator 2? Someone at your table. Okay, so you're the Terminator 2 table, all right? So in 1984, a movie came out called The Terminator with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And it was about this killer robot that came from the future to kill a woman in the present day whose son was going to grow up to be the future leader of the human beings against the robots. Okay? Stick with it. It's Hollywood, Okay, Terminator 2 is obviously the sequel to that. The date, August 29th, 1997, is the date that in that film, Skynet, the AI system, became self-aware and decided that it was going to eliminate its primary enemies, which were human beings, And the way that it did that, tried to do that, was it launched United States nuclear missiles against Russia. Russia launched against the United States, worldwide apocalypse. Okay? So when those movies came out, and when you got to August 29th, 1997, in kind of the sci-fi world, people are like, it's Judgment Day. You know. But that is one of the examples of where AI gets scary, is where we give AI such autonomy that it makes decisions we don't want it to make. Okay? Hollywood is filled with these kinds of stories. Each one of these movies or shows that are up on the screen right now are examples of ones where AI is used in ways that are kind of terrifying. And I would love to say that all of them are somewhere out in the future and are not here yet. Some of them are here now. So, for example, I see it over here. This table has the movie Minority Report, movie that came out about 15 years ago with Tom Cruise. It is about what is called future crime, where what AI does is it goes through the genetic codes of every human being and begins to work out who will be criminals and who won't be. And so people are arrested prematurely before they can commit a crime. How do you feel about that? Now, we don't know that there's no one using something like this, but military, research, some police departments are using forms of AI for behavioral research to try to get at whether people will be able to get out of prison, things of that sort. These things are present. Yeah, Carolyn. Yep. 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 Yeah, science fiction is prophetic. There's a lot of science fiction that is not just like blast and shoot up aliens and space battles, but is speculative about what the future may hold. Brave New World is a perfect example. 1984 is a great example. 2001 is a great example. Some of the other books of Isaac Asimov and Arthur C. Clarke. There's one that is been turned into a Netflix show that just came out called The Three-Body Problem. It's written by a Chinese author. I don't recommend the show. The show is over the top. The book is this fascinating look at authoritarianism and what it can do in the future. And so there's some of this that is here now. There is also the reality that there are some militaries in the world right now that are using AI. In Ukraine, there is a story, it was on the New York Times Daily podcast, about how in Ukraine right now, because the Ukrainians are running short on people and running short on weapons, they're enlisting technology to, for example, people who run drone companies. They've trained drones to where they can target an individual, they will lock on to the image of the individual, and will follow that individual having ammunition on them and literally blow them up. And it's using, a tiny bit of explosive and a $50 drone that you can buy. Ukraine has been experimenting with AI-powered machine guns on the battlefield that would recognize soldiers or people ahead of them and just on their own attack. And they're doing this because they are desperate to continue to repel the Russian invasion. Our government is researching drone swarms that would go along with attack squadrons with jets, where you would have squadrons of drones doing the same kind of thing. So these are some of the things that are here. They are here, and they are scary. There is also the scariness of the things Nancy mentioned. There's a lot that can be faked. I guarantee you between now and November 5th, you will see Republicans and you will see Democrats and you will see Russian troll farms and you will see other bad actors will create fake images, will create fake videos, will create fake speeches or quotes from Kamala Harris, from Donald Trump. I guarantee you they will be doing that. And as you said, you heard me say, that is across the board because they can do this. You can literally take someone's voice and shape it and make a speech or a quote from that person's voice that sounds almost 100% authentic. Guy who did the voice of Darth Vader in Star Wars, James Earl Jones. He's in his 90s now. His voice doesn't sound the same. James Earl Jones has signed a contract with Lucasfilm to where they can use AI to continue to create his voice to voice Darth Vader in future Star Wars stories. Yeah. So, Nancy. Yeah. I'm going to get to that, my theory on that in just a minute. Okay? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If you go, like you said, GPS.
Mm-hmm.
How many of us have been on GPS and they send you to a dead end?
Yep.
So how can you go with that?
Yeah. Well, the reality is 95% of the time it gets it right. and yeah. So that's, I mean, these are legitimate questions of what do you do in terms of how much we give over to AI and to forms of technology. One other thing I want to share, and this is something that if you have mentioned earlier, if you have grandkids, if you have kids, if you have neighbor kids that you care about, one of the scariest things that I heard is that there are apps online that are called nudify apps, where somebody can take a photo of a person, upload it, and AI will create a nude image of that person. There's an entire podcast that I heard about a group of girls in a high school in Illinois where a boy used this app and created all kinds of scenes of these girls having sex together and distributed them around the school. All of them were fake. And so it is imperative that we are having some of those conversations with our kids and with our grandkids about being safe as much as we can, but also about remembering how it is we treat other people. You know, in that case, the boy who did that, yeah, I don't know what was in his mind but in the same way, think about, it's this modern day version of a peeping Tom. And yep. You could do it with Kamala Harris or Donald Trump. Yeah. Emma? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I share this not just to because this is going to come to where we're got one more part here, and then I'm going to share. Okay, what do we do from now? Because we're about 1 o'clock. We'll go a little bit longer. Is that okay with folks? Okay. All right. AI is not going away. All right. Just flat out, it's not. Each one of these films reflects different aspects of where AI is right now. Go to 2001. If we start sending people to Mars or to Europa or other places, we're going to need to find ways that human beings, say, can sleep that entire time and not have to eat, not have to kind of have, all the things that we would normally have. You're going to need something that's going to run the ship. these are, so for all it's good and for all the scary, love to give you great news and say it's going to be rosy. I don't know. Because we are dealing with a technology right now where right now the morality and ethics thinking about it is catching up to the research about it. Science is amazing. Science is beautiful. Science is necessary. Science is a gift that we have. But one thing that scientists sometimes do is a quote from the movie and the book Jurassic Park. Researchers sometimes are so worried or so excited about whether they can do something that they don't ask whether they should. And so we're now kind of catching up and asking some of the ethical questions. All right, so what can we do? All right, first is educate ourselves, okay, as best as we can. We got to know what some of this stuff is and what it isn't. Know some of the things about what AI can do that's really great, and some of the things that it can do that is terrifying, and the things that are in between, right? Because some of those same movies that we talked about here and some of those stories, and the same thing, talk about how AI and these automated technologies are great, but also not great, right? And that's how it is with all of this right now. It's really good, and it's also, yeah. So we have to educate ourselves. We have to reach out to government officials about this, and we have to elect people who understand these things. That last one, I really debated about whether to put in there. But when I saw one thing about, it was Sam Altman and Mark Zuckerberg, and I forget the name of who's the current chairperson of Google, who came before a Senate committee. These senators who are asking questions had no clue what they were talking about. And they're asking questions that are like so far behind where this is that I can imagine those tech guys there were like, what's this all about? You know, so that's not an ageism statement, but it is something of we need people in positions of power, locally and beyond, who have some understanding of this. Yeah, and that is a hard thing. I mean, I could give you a few political opinions on my own here if you'd want, but that's not what I will tell you one thing is term limits. Okay, I'm off that one. But even things like school boards. Do schools have policies about how to deal with these kind of things? That school that I mentioned in Illinois, they had no policy of how to deal with online harassment and online fakes. The student who did that got a 1-day suspension because they was just said, okay, it was his first case of bullying. Okay? Now, due process, do you give this kid a chance? You know, all of this, these are legit questions. But the school had no policy around that. When I heard that, I live in Wyoming, Ohio. When I heard that, I sent an immediate message to our school superintendent and said, what is Wyoming City Schools policy on this? He sent me it. I'm glad they had it. Does Fort Thomas have that? I don't know. But we need to have people, you know, even if they don't understand, they got to have people who are around them who know how to work with this. Be able to put some guardrails on some of this. So what do we do ourselves with this? So this is how I approach a lot of this. So this gets back to what's come up several different times from Nancy and a few other folks. I'll be honest, if I get something forwarded to me by anybody, it says, oh, look at this image, or look at this meme, or check out this video of this figure, I'm pretty wary about it. I'm not going to take it as gospel truth that it is real. And as much as I have problems with a lot of the mainstream media, they're probably still our best place for being able to filter through some of the things that are fake and aren't. They're not perfect. Believe me, I know that. They're not perfect. But they have tools that we do not have for being able to detect fakes and so forth. So social media is flooded with trolls and with disinformation farms from places like Russia and China and other places like that are putting out tons and tons of things to just muddy the waters. So my view is, if you see it, someone posted on Facebook or someone forwarded an email to you or a text, chances are I'd be like, I'm not buying it. That's how I approach things. I don't like approaching the world that way, but that's the world we live in. So be wary of what you receive on emails and social. This kind of ties in a little bit of internet safety stuff. Yes.
Like my phone has a filter on here, stuff I don't see.
Mm-hmm.
Would that get to that, or would that, would it get in?
So the question is you have a filter on things.
Like my telephone and that.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I go into email,
Mm-hmm.
there's 50,000 I've never seen.
Yeah.
Filtered it out.
Exactly. So, Google has Gmail has a spectacular spam filter. You know what? It's using machine learning to try to figure out what's spam and what's not. And it's using their algorithms to try to decide that. Most of the time they get it right. Some of the times they don't. I go into my junk folder and go, oh wait, I needed to see that. Yeah, it's not perfect. So, if you get something and it feels weird, trust your gut. It probably is. We've had some scam emails that have gone around, that people have gotten like an email from Pastor Ed saying, I need you to buy me $800 worth of Amazon gift cards. Really? If you get that feels a little weird, call me first and say, did you ask about $800 of gift cards? No. Okay, delete it. So trust your gut. If something feels weird, it probably is. This goes beyond AI, but if you get an email, you get a text and it has a link to something, I will tell you, I very rarely, if ever, click a link in an email that I get from somebody. But instead, like if I get something from my bank, okay, USAA shows up, email from them, I will just go to USAA's website and look it up directly from there, not from the link in the email. It's a little more of a hassle, but it saves a lot of headaches. Same kind of thing, you get a call from somebody and says, hey, you have a problem with your Windows computer. If you didn't call somebody to say I've got problems with my Windows computer, it's a scam. And they're going to try to take you for money or something else, or your identity or so forth. They said, invest with troll farms, know your algorithms. I know not all of you are on social media, but if you are on social media, every single social media platform, Facebook, X, Instagram, Discord, you name it, are algorithm based. They are not giving you an unbiased view of what is there in your feed. They are giving you the things that they think you are most going to click on and stay on their site. That's all that they're doing. And an algorithm is basically, again, machine learning, AI type of thing, where it is interpreting the interactions of other people around, say, a post on Facebook. And say, let's say you are a political conservative, right? And someone posts something about Nancy Pelosi, and that's negative about her. And that gets a lot of likes and a lot of hits and a lot of comments. Facebook, because of your other interactions, knows that a person is already conservative politically. So chances are that has got a better chance of showing up in your feed than something that isn't. And so this is the algorithm, is what's going on in the background, is doing this. So when you look at a Facebook feed, it is not an unbiased thing. It is taking everything that it knows already about you and interpreting what it thinks you most would want to see, and more importantly, what will keep you on their site, clicking on links and advertising and what you buy, exactly. So yeah, it's a scary world, and I would love to tell you that it's not. As a pastor, there's things that, I look at this and I'm like, good grief. Like, This isn't what I was taught in seminary. But the Insurance Board of the United Church of Christ had a seminar that I viewed the other day that was about AI safety. What do churches do if, let's say, so every one of my sermons over the last 4 years are up on YouTube. Someone could take those and craft something using my voice to say something I wouldn't say. And let's say someone in the church gets an email, or I get an email that says, hey, we have this audio clip of you saying this. Give us $500, or we'll take, and otherwise we're going to send it to your church. That happened to our executive president, to our conference minister, Carl Robinson. It wasn't a voice thing, but it was a thing saying, we have photos of you doing things, I won't tell you what it said, and it was trying to blackmail him. It wasn't true, but so yeah, the insurance board had this whole thing about how do churches think about this, and how do they make sure that they don't just immediately jump to saying, oh yeah, got this email with this picture of Pastor Ed. That seemed like something Pastor Ed would do. You know, so these are some of the things that are out there. As I said, I would love to tell you what it is, that it's a safe world out there. It's not in some ways. But a lot of it is be smart. A lot of it is trust your gut. And know that we're in this place where we're trying to figure out, just like go back, you know, last year this time we were watching the movie Oppenheimer was out. You know, we're going to make the bomb. We made the bomb. And then it was, oh, wait, what have we done? We're the same kind of place right now with this. So, all right, I know we went about 10 minutes over. I haven't given you a lot of time for questions, but any questions at this point? It completely made you lose sleep tonight. Yeah. Yes. I reached out to WCPO. Yep. Yeah, I reached out and said, this is going on, and yeah, we need to just kind of, as best we can, get this word out. Yeah. Yep. For those who are wondering, I was interviewed on WCPO and on Spectrum News about a series of scam emails that were sent, quote, by me, and also there was one that was sent out by a member of our church. It wasn't real. It wasn't sent by me or that person. But it was, and literally every church that I know has dealt with this and is dealing with this. So it isn't just Christ Church. Any other questions? I don't know if thank you is the right word on some of that. So I do have some handouts here with some online resources. If you want to play around with ChatGPT or with some of these other AI tools, the links are there. I will tell you, if you go to try to Google Gemini, if you agree to their user agreement, you are telling that you're giving all kinds of data to them that you're not going to want to give. But if you want to do it, buyer beware. And then some different stories, most of them from the New York Times, but one in particular that I want to lift up is an article called "It's Not AI That I Fear, It's Us." It's written by a pastor named Nadia Bolz-Weber. Quick word of warning, Nadia uses salty language a fair bit, so just know that that's there. But her whole reflection is, I'm not scared of the technology. I'm scared of the people, because it's us who are doing these things. And so it's a really, really, really good reflection. So anyway, those are all on here. So encourage you, if you want to take a look at those, you're welcome to. So thank you. And I'll stay around if you have any other questions you want to talk to them just on your own. Thank you.